We are talking today about The Joker, the recent film The Joker, and in the context of emotional pain. So it's an excellent film to portray some of the topics that we're going to talk about today. Hi Harsh, what did you think of The Joker firstly?
I think Joker talks a very deep-rooted issue of what emotional pain is and what it can do to a human being, not just physically but mentally. And it lays the foundation about the bigger problems that we are facing. So it's like a microcosm of the entire suffering that we see in the world.
Can we talk firstly about the portrayal of emotional pain in this film? Because, there are so many good examples and so many good scenes in this film, but could you just talk to us about what you thought were the better portrayals of emotional pain in The Joker?
I think the first important thing that I liked about this movie was the physical appearance. What the actor just put, Joaquin Phoenix was got into the role, and it shows his whether it's his demeanor, the way he looks, how he dresses, actually shows a defeated person that who is going through an emotional turmoil and having a lot of issues with expressing himself, the confusion that he's experiencing, and a bit of helplessness, which is very evident in his appearance. It's like you can see a slouching shoulders and his erratic walk. You can see a defeated person.
Actually, everything about his physical appearance screamed pain to me. Apart from the obvious Joker smile,
Yes.
which is obviously the opposite of a smile, he physically looked in pain.
Yes.
It was coming out in, like you say, the hunched shoulders, the under-nutrient sort of body, the tight muscles, the anxious walking, the looking around, the movements, the whole persona and physical portrayal of emotional pain was so good that it's painful to watch.
Yes.
Because it came at you just from his physical portrayal. What about, you mentioned confusion just then. Can you just talk about the portrayal of the mental confusion, why he was confused and how that relates to the emotional situation?
What you just pointed out, that he was smiling even though he was suffering. I think that is the mental confusion a person face, that we have to put an appearance that we are fine, but internally you are going through a turmoil. That creates a different confusion in the brain, that why do I have to put myself that I'm all okay even if I'm not? And this creates a sense of, you can say, that we are lying to people, which creates fear, and you feel like you will be called out. But the fear is too much that you won't be heard by anyone, so it builds up. It's like a negative feedback of not telling your truth, which creates a confusion and which creates more suffering.
Absolutely. So we're in pain, but we can't show it. We have to fake it. We have to be imposters, and we have to deny it. So it's an emotional pain that cannot be shown. It cannot be portrayed. We can only put on a happy front to look like we're well adjusted. Otherwise, we're in denial, and that breeds the confusion. And because you're playing a game, but it's not making any sense. It's a cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
And wow, did he nail that, or the writers nail that? It was so well portrayed. What about, we just touched a little bit on suppression of emotion, and that feeds into the confusion, but the pressure to suppress feeling, emotion, emotional pain, distress. Can you talk about the pressure as it was shown in The Joker?
What you talked about, that when you suppress your emotion is mostly because you feel this perceived pressure or notion that you have to be okay, you have to toe the line. If you express yourself, that is out of bound. And it actually talks about how much confusion people face. Should I tell my reality that I'm suffering? But the pressure of the society, you it's like an influence on you, Don't talk it out loud. Don't tell your feelings. Don't upset the norm. Everything is going good. So it can breed frustration. It can come out in form of anger and can lead to violence also. So I think that this has been often portrayed in movies to show the the landscape of a person. That one of that is suppression of emotion and what it can lead to. Yes.
Yes, I think that's very true. And again, mentioning earlier, you mentioned helplessness, which even if you don't relate to the Joker on the mental health spectrum or anything to do with his position, you could possibly relate to the helplessness, because most people have been in some kind of a circumstance where they've suffered emotional pain due to being the feeling of helplessness. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Where do you turn? Where do you go? And I think, I did find this film extremely hard to watch. I couldn't look away. It was that good. But I also found it very hard to watch him struggling to find some empathetic person. And even the scene where he's talking to his counsellor, I think it was, who basically said, well, I'm shutting up shop. There's no money. You're on your own. Where do I get my script? He has no answer. She has no answer for that. It's the helplessness.
Yes.
The Joker character, the portrayal of that helplessness, that I think is where a lot of emotional pain comes from too. With you can't save yourself. What do you do?
I think that this movie actually does talk about, we are very, as a society, we rush to judgment of other people, that why are they doing this is wrong and things like that. But if we have this compassion and we can try to understand that person is actually helpless. No one actually wants to be bad, unless, I often say this thing is that the talk of morality always comes when your stomach is filled. When you see Joker character in the movie, you see that he's struggling to keep his mother alive and well fed, to just somehow do his job, even though he's being victimized. He's trying to be nice to everyone. There's a scene where he's trying to make a kid smile and he gets yelled at for it. So we often have this idea as a society of scapegoating. Oh, that person is doing wrong, that person is doing wrong. But we never think about that. Maybe that person is in this situation and feeling of helplessness, that he or she has to resort to it. And this movie portrays very well that emotional pain can actually, and along with helplessness, can make you do things that you never intended to do.
Yeah, very true. It's set him off on a path that he didn't want to take. And you could say there's choice and things like that, and ultimately you're an adult, but it felt more like a compulsion. What was he supposed to do?
Yes.
But talking about emotional pain, actually this film makes the viewer experience emotional pain watching it, because it's actually excruciating watching him try and then get knocked down, try and then get knocked down, be misunderstood, not have any options. It actually makes the viewer have an emotional pain. I found the second time I watched this that I couldn't finish the film because I knew what was coming, and I knew his humiliation was coming, and I couldn't watch that humiliation. So I even had an emotional pain in response to watching the film. But that's another topic. But did you want to talk about distorted perception? Because I think that the character Joker struggled with that throughout the film.
Yes. When you are in immense mental confusion, when you can't express yourself, your mind starts to play tricks on you. Your perception starts distorting. And once you have been victimized, or you feel like victimized, you see everything as a threat. And sometimes your mind can create an alternative narrative for what's happening.
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense. And that's where the delusion and hallucination comes from. But that is actually evident when you see a person in hallucination. What's difficult to see is a person with distorted perception, but you can't pinpoint it. So this movie shows about that anything that's happening around him, he is having a distorted perception that no, that person is lying to me, that person is not listening to me, they are not trying to understand me, even though a lot of people did try to help him. But because of his perception, he is just looking at the problem but not the people who are trying to help him. And this is a lot of it does talk about how we humans in society think. At we often look at the problems we are having, not the blessings. And this movie portrays, even though it's very hard to look for his blessing because he's completely in a very difficult position. But if you think from a point, then comes the frame of reference for a person who is homeless, he's actually having a better life. And I think that what you often talk about is that who is worthy of help. So that this distorted perception can create that, why is no one helping me, while the other person is thinking you already have everything.
Yeah, good point. You know, I found a really interesting part of this film was how he was a little uncomfortable and awkward in society when he was out doing his work, when he was with other people. But when he went home and he was talking to his mum, he spoke completely normally, if I can use the word normal. You know, he just spoke to her regular, what are we having for tea, this kind. He had a normal dialogue with his mother. And it was only when he thought his mother was lying to him that he thought his reality was challenged at that time. He didn't know what was right or wrong, what was real, what wasn't. His perception, they just fed into his already, all the troubles he was already having. So I just really liked that, how that depiction of him being okay at home. He was capable. He was actually fine if he was treated okay. But the distorted reality came when there were just too many inconsistencies in what people were telling him. So, you know, he wanted to live a regular life. He tried to fit in, but the denying of him allowing to express his pain, you know, fed into a lot of sort of dysfunctional sort of outcomes. And we can talk about that next, actually. I think what are the dangers of untreated or suppressed emotional pain as shown in this film? What happened because he was unable to get any help?
This question reminds me of one philosopher once said that once you suppress an idea, it comes in its most ugly and vile form. It's like that. If you have an emotional pain, if you are suffering and you are suppressing it, there is no venting out or it's not addressed properly, it festers like a cancer and it can turn very ugly. And what I see that the problem that can be created by untreated emotional pain is violence. Not just the violence that you see out there, but the violence which you can't see. It can be domestic violence, it can be violence against animals, it can be violence against self, and it can lead to a lot of thinking that I am a victim. A victim mindset can come into that. You see everyone as an abuser, and that can fester on and become become very dark place for you, that it's very hard to find light.
Well, you said a really important thing then when I think we haven't talked about this yet, about emotional pain, which is it's invisible. And you can see a broken arm, you can see a sore or a cut on someone's leg, but you cannot see this form of pain and the emotional pain. And I think that's a very good point you made there. People see the person, then they see an act of violence, but they cannot see the cause. And it's a hidden and it's an invisible cut that's happening at that time. And who is taught how to handle emotions? I mean, are we taught? Maybe we watch our parents. If they are not good at it, then we are not taught. So violence seems an inevitable outcome in some of these cases. And in fact, the Joker did take that route. Massive spoiler alert, we should have done at the start. But he ended up taking that route to save himself, to defend the threats that were coming towards him. As you said, a victim mindset sets in, and then every single thing that comes your way looks like a danger. And so you're trying to save yourself at that time. But there's the collateral damage. I think you wanted to talk about that too. What happens when the people around. When
Yes.
one single person cannot show or express emotional pain, what can happen?
Yes. In this movie, that no one actually looked at his diary. He was keeping a journal, and he wrote a very, very important line that the society wants me to act normal, or like just as if I don't. So it's the assumption. And when you talk about the collateral damage, so he is having his, in the movie, that he is having his reality being told, a new reality, and he meets the young kid, young Bruce, and he can imagine, I could have had a good life, but I didn't, in his mind. But he didn't think that his action can actually traumatize a kid, and creates the another cycle of a traumatized kid becoming a violent man, creating more traumatized kids. So this is, we actually have not talked about in modern society, is the collateral damage of our action. Whether you see a war, whether you see an act of rebellion or things like that, we often take sides, what is right and wrong, but we don't actually see the collateral damage. In this movie, he is showing that he is the representation of oppressed common man, while uh, Thomas Wayne is the rich man, and he's blaming the poor people, and poor people are blaming him. But we are not thinking about the collateral damage, which is a kid of a poor man or a rich man. They all are kids.
Yes, yes.
And this can lead to a paranoia and a fear, because we started thinking as us versus them. The cliques emerge, and we keep thinking we should, oh, it's we and them are the problem. And that becomes a, like a tinderbox for anyone to light fire.
Yeah.
So I think the dangers of untreated emotional pain is violence and damage to the people who can't protect themselves, like kids and elderlies.
Yeah, that's a good point that you don't think of actually. A lot of the time, you just focus on the one person perpetrating what you think is violence. But before we move on to a wider discussion about society in regards to emotional pain, can you just tell me some of your best scenes in this film that you thought were done really well in terms of the actor and the writers portraying emotional pain on an individual level? For me, I think of the sort of the dancing and the washroom, the sort of the public convenience room. But what were some of the scenes that stayed with you on an individual level that Joaquin Phoenix did with the Joker?
I think you pointed out the dance in the washroom, because that emotional pain and that helplessness finally broke off, and he did an act of violence, and he felt that surge of power in him, and he went to this washroom, and you can see the dance of chaos in him, a new order emerging in him. Suddenly he's feeling this powerful, and he can experience the ecstasy of finally having, from a position where he was pushed down to a position where he can take a life. And it's a life-changing event for him. And Joaquin Phoenix showed very beautifully, and the choreography was so good, the musical score was so good. It shows the metamorphosis of a person from when he had no longer has fear and anything to lose. That person will change inside out and will take a form which is often taught in mythologies and all the world's mythologies, that it can take a destructive form, and it becomes an idea, it becomes like something that you can't contain. And I think that is very poignant part of the movie, the metamorphosis of Joker.
Yeah, absolutely. That happens. I think that's why it's excruciating to watch, because you feel like there's an inevitability about what's about to happen, because he has just been so pushed into that corner, it comes out, the invisible pain, the emotional pain is coming out physically now.
Yes.
It cannot be kept in.
Yep.
It's had no outlet, and it's
Yes.
coming out. And I think for me, the thing that I remember, if I think of this film, apart from his physical portrayal and demeanor, was when he had a delusional relationship.
Yes.
And with someone he thought was real, and he thought the conversations were real, and you feel very sorry for him at that time, because
Yes.
it's what he wished had happened. He was wishing empathy out of people. He was wishing connection.
Yes.
He was wishing relationships. And he lost the complete plot of what was real. So does the viewer. The viewer is trying to figure out what is real and what is not. And I thought an emotional pain shown by a fake or fictitious relationship could not have been done better, because everybody in the world basically relates to not having a person or not having been understood. And that thread through the story of, is this relationship he has real? And then to find out that it's not, you just, as the viewer yourself, you just imagine the depths of despair that would put you in, you know. But I think this film, apart from showing emotional pain on one of the best ever, portrayals that I have seen, I think that it leaves a lot of scope, as do a lot of the Batman stories, to talk about society.
Yes.
And a lot of the superhero films actually try to bring up big society discussions and points, and the Joker is a brilliant one.
Yep.
But did you want to talk about some of the bigger societal points that came out of this film?
Yes. When the movie starts, it talks about a strike. The garbage is not collected, and it's such a beautiful representation. If the garbage is not taken out, it will pollute the city and it will create problem. And it's like a metaphorical significance that if you don't take out the garbage in your mind, and you don't take out the garbage from the society, and if you don't take care of the waste, it will create problems. And it does explain a lot about that. It's a very simple problem of a garbage, but it's making people on edge. It's making the job provider be angry, and he's taking out on his employers. The same thing that happens in society. There is a very good depiction that a boss yells at the employee yells at the wife yells at the kid yells at the cat. There is a photo of this. So it does talk about the cascading effect of untreated emotional pain at the societal level.
Well, that's your collateral damage again.
Yes.
I mean, no one can take a rubbish strike or a garbage strike to the level of what can happen, down the line. Everything's connected.
Yes.
Nothing has, there's no situation where there might not be a victim at the end of it.
Yes.
But yeah, that was a nice metaphor, huh?
Yes, and
like the garbage of the mind.
Yes, and the role of media, to show the reality in a right way. Because if you look at the people he killed on the train, they were very, very hardworking kids, but they never knew what they actually did. And the way the Joker was actually made fun of on the media. So it also talks about media is a very important part of society, but if it doesn't do its role properly, if it doesn't put the right people in context and creates false heroes and a wrong narrative, it can have again the cascading effect that can have a wide problem. It does talk about the role of the blessed ones, the people who are rich, the people who have something, that if you are bestowed with something by grace of maybe your past family experiences or whatever we handed over to you, when you think about the rights, think about the responsibilities also. So it does show about that one day you might be questioned that you have more than others, but have you given something back? And it always points to the question of that as a human, it's not about what we take, it's about what we give. And this movie talks a lot about it, because once people start to keep taking in and not giving back, the people who are not having it might want use the different way to reestablish the order.
Yes, I think. I mean, that's in the Batman films a lot of the time.
Yeah.
This concept, and some of the other superheroes, that the injustice, the imbalance. I think there's a lot of discussion these days in a lot of different formats or forums about rich versus poor, which I think does get a little bit off the track, but is trying to talk about an imbalance,
Yes.
even if it targets maybe unfairly sometimes. But I think that they were trying to show that these things aren't benign. You know, there will be an impact. Back to your collateral damage.
Yes.
But what about some of the systems we see in terms of the legal, the law, the police, the judiciary? How was that shown in the Joker?
I think that the portrayal is that police as a rule of law is shown in a way that it's not working. The system, the garbage collection is not working. The media is not working. These systems, which were supposed to put the actually enact the laws that they are supposed to actually uphold, they are not doing their job. If you don't do the job, because let's say you are a police, you have been given a responsibility to uphold the law. But when you're taking favors, when you're taking sides, it can create a systemic problem. If the judiciary is impartial, then you can have a sense of justice. But if the judiciary, if you think, is biased, is bent, then it can create a fundamental problem of trust. And the lack of trust, whether it comes in police or judiciary or government, can lead to wider chaos. And the final scene, when he is taking the form, when the riots broke out, and he is becoming the so-called the messiah of chaos at that time, it actually shows that when the order that was supposed to do its job doesn't do it, the chaos will come, and it will break the old order, and which will demand a new order also. And it does talk about that as a society we have to always adapt to the new realities. The moment we think that this is the perfect order, this is the perfect system, we are going down, because the society is improving at every level. So it does talk about the rust in the system is setting in, and it can lead to breaking of the entire system.
It's like a tsunami of emotional pain, this film, because it's on the individual level of the Joker. It's his mother.
Yes.
It's Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
It's the people who lost their jobs. It's the people who can't get funding. It's the effect of the garbage strike. It is emotional pain on so many different levels.
Yes.
And what can happen when it's not treated seriously.
Yes.
And it's an invisible pain, which is why people can't understand it. If you can't see it, it's really hard to understand.
Yes.
So I think this film is so excruciating to watch, but it's so essential to watch. And I think it actually would make people feel better. Some people who have not been able to express their experiences, this film might be one way that they might feel heard.
Yes.
In as much as the issues are actually being shown, and the unfairness and the complete lack of support. So I don't know about you. What are your final sort of thoughts about this film? What would you like to say?
I think this film is a very good portrayal of what a mental confusion feels like. It can make you think, it can make you experience, and what it can lead to. And it shows at very core level the driving forces, the seemingly good things which are not working in the right order, but we can't pinpoint on that, but we just find a scapegoat in so-called mentally ill. And we don't see that as it's a byproduct of a rotten system. So this movie is a very good example that we are having a lot of talk about mental illness and mental health, especially among men also, that if the system is rotten, we will have this problem. So we have this movie shows about the dangers if you don't treat the problem at the core level. Don't look at the offshoots. Look at the basic foundation which needs to be treated.
Yeah. I don't think you can say it better than that. Thanks, Ash.
Thank you.
Thanks for subscribing to our channel. And for a deep dive on health, relationships, and more, please visit menPsyche.com. We hope to see you there.